welcome to Fleet Safety Geeks. I'm Bob.
And I'm Phil, and we welcome you to our podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Fleet Safety Geeks. I'm Bob Mossing, and I'm here with Phil Mosier. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. We have an important topic. I always say we have an important topic. Isn't every topic important in
Every
fleet safety,
topic's
Phil?
important. Yeah, well, so we're going to talk
Yep,
about football, Eagles. Well, the
that's very
Phillies are
important.
tanking, but the
Yep.
Eagles are doing well, so I just want to talk about Eagles. Yeah.
Well, I'm from Cleveland, and I don't really care about the teams in Cleveland. I'm not from Cleveland, but I live here. But I think the Guardians are still in first place in their division.
I think they're doing well, yeah.
Yeah, they're really closing out the season well. The Browns, I actually watched a game. They were up by 13 with under 2 minutes to go, and they lost that game. So that was
Ugh,
interesting.
heartbreaker.
Yeah. So for all the Cleveland people out there, I'm sorry, but I think you're used to loss and disappointment. So no big loss there.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, I'm actually a Broncos fan, and we won 11-10 over some other team, and it was an embarrassing game. So we're not going to go there. But what we are going to talk about is really an important topic of what's going on in our industry, and that's supply chain shortages. Um, Supply chain is affecting every industry, from our groceries to raw materials for factories, but also for the automotive industry. Manufacturers are having a hard time building vehicles right now. It started with the microprocessor
Hmm.
software chip.
Right.
Um, Semiconductor, I think, is what the technical term is. But it's moved on to other things, right? I mean, everything from parts to the vehicle to being able to put a catalytic converter in a new car, to other parts that just go in a vehicle when it's built, which makes it impossible for them to deliver a new vehicle for a fleet.
Yeah, and the obvious issues with that is that extending life cycles on fleet vehicles, and how does that relate to safety? Well, we're going to get into that.
Yeah, because you're exactly right. If you can't get a new vehicle, you got to keep the old one.
Right.
And how do we keep that old one safe? That's exactly what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, so as every fleet is facing, and I know this because I call around every day. A good portion of my job, I like to say, a good portion of my job these days is just calling around asking if a dealer or a supplier or an upfitter or anybody that has a bailment pool, does anybody have any vehicles I can buy? And the answer is always no, or someone laughs at me. So that means that I have to keep the vehicles that I have had on the road for some time, even longer. Um, and so we do that by making sure that they're properly maintained. We have to have every fleet, no matter what, even in perfect normal times, we have to have a good preventative maintenance schedule, right? We have to make sure our vehicles are going in, I say, every 5,000 miles. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think 5,000. I mean, you say manufacturer recommended, but I think 5,000 is a good mileage to use as far as proper maintenance and checking the vehicle oil and filter changes and things like that. And we'll get into each one of those, but I think that's just a solid rule of thumb.
Yeah, I've been doing this 23 years, and that's what we've always used. Oil technology has changed. There's a lot of
Right.
synthetic oil out there.
Right.
And usually you can get 7,500 to 10,000 miles
Right.
on a synthetic oil. And so a lot of people, especially my drivers, challenge me saying, why do we have to go in every five? And I say, we're doing more than just putting oil in that car. We're looking at the tires. We're making sure they're
Correct.
properly inflated. We pull them off. We check the brakes. We look at steering, suspension. And as we extend the life of our vehicles today and our fleets, we need to be doing that religiously. We need to make sure that's getting done, because the safety of the driver in that vehicle and the safety of others on the road, if that vehicle is not properly maintained, are at jeopardy here. So that's why we need to in my opinion, at least right now, um, go every 5.
Yeah, I think it
When we
even
get out of
becomes, obviously it's even more important now with extending the life cycles of the vehicles. Obviously, um, they there has to be a consistent um, maintenance schedule. And I love the 5,000, Bob, just for the reasons you said. So it's just not about the oil and the filter, right? It's checking everything,
right,
which
right.
is so important.
Yeah, I have so my fleet is basically the majority of my fleet is a minivan. It's a civilian vehicle, but it's used as a work truck. We put a lot of miles on it, and things fail. Um,
Right.
Rubber
Okay.
gets old. So if we're driving down the road, and I've got some on the road with over 150,000 miles right now, and
Yeah.
my normal replacement cycle is about 75,000 miles.
Yeah.
We always turn it in
Doubling it. Yeah.
before any major mechanical problem
Hmm.
happens. A vehicle on the road right now with 150,000 miles, it's not really designed for that. Without doing proper maintenance, a hose could fail, right?
Right.
A radiator hose, can just, you see them bubble up, they start cracking, and it could blow out while a driver's driving. Well, maybe not a safety issue. It's certainly an inconvenience. It's certainly a revenue problem.
Well, it could become a safety issue because if there's a breakdown alongside the road, now you're susceptible
Yep.
to becoming a crash victim that way. If there's an engine failure, obviously, if that happens at a bad time, now you're a sitting duck. So I think that all of this can relate to safety if you think about it.
Yeah. So the safety of what I'm thinking about from an immediate maintenance issue is bad brakes, right? You can't
Yeah.
stop the car. You're probably going to hit somebody. If you blow a
No.
hose, you're probably not going to hit somebody, but you could get hit on the side of the road.
Right. Right.
Um, and I've actually had a driver in Pittsburgh. I think we've all been through it. We all know the roads there. There are lots of hills, lots of
Yeah.
highways that
Yeah.
just are all over the place. There's not a lot of room on the side of the road. So if you break down on a highway system where there's not a lot of room on the side, but that's where your vehicle is, you have, especially during rush hour, tons of vehicles just flying past you inches from you and your car if you're standing on the side of the road. So yeah, that's a certain issue, certainly a safety issue if you break down on the side of the road. Yeah.
So that's, I think, and that's not something I think, we always do some prep when we do these podcasts. That's something that we did not include as far as, what do you do in case of breakdown? So that, a driver has to make a decision. Do I stay in the vehicle? Do I get out of the vehicle? And then just there's personal safety issues. Where is the area where you're broken down? What do you do then? Do you stay in? You call for help. Obviously, you put your emergency flashers on. If you have anything that you can put out behind the vehicle, a flare or a triangle, do that. Do that very carefully. If it's tight quarters, be very careful about opening up that door. Can you get out on the passenger side away from traffic? And these are all things that just are common sense things that maybe need to be discussed. And as silly as it sounds, Bob, I tell drivers, have that emergency kit where you maybe have the triangle or the flares or whatever, but also, like a bright green or orange vest that you put on so that if you do have to be alongside the road, you can be seen. That's what, why do you think these construction workers wear these things? I'm not telling them they need to have a hard hat, but it'd be good to be able to be seen. And also at nighttime, make sure you have a working flashlight in your vehicle so that you can be seen. And people say, well, I'll stand out in front of my vehicle. That's a bad choice because if it gets tagged from behind, now you're run over by your own vehicle. If you can stand off to the side, that's best. If not, then I say get far behind the vehicle up the road. That way, then drivers coming towards the vehicle are actually going to see you and maybe be, even more prepared that there's something going on up there. They'll see the vehicle. So again, so there's a disclaimer, Bob. We always have to do this. You have to make the best decisions based on your circumstances.
Yep.
It's fluid.
No, that's a really good point, and we probably should have included that in this topic.
Yeah.
And it could also be a separate topic or
Yeah.
combined with something else. But yeah, all of my vehicles have a safety kit. We have that
Great.
the triangle, the flares, flashlights, a blanket. Some even come with a little bit of food if you get stranded
There
overnight
you
in a
go. All
snowstorm.
right.
But
Depends on where
yeah,
you're
and
at.
again,
Yeah.
a disclaimer. Usually the best place to be is to stay inside your vehicle if you have a breakdown, because
Right.
that vehicle is going to protect you. I can't tell you how many times I see, coverage of, you see it every year, right? There's low visibility, there's a snowstorm going on, and all these cars just start getting involved in accidents because they can't see what's going on up ahead. So trucks are flying in, other cars are flying in, and there's a traffic jam because everybody has crashed. Black ice on the road, zero visibility.
Hmm.
But then you see these idiots getting out of the car, running
I
around.
know. It's just
Stay
silly.
in the car.
In those situations, Bob, actually, it's going to sound silly again, but the best place is the right front passenger seat with the seatbelt on. That's your safest thing to do,
Yeah,
typically. But again, depending on your circumstances, if your vehicle's sticking out in traffic, you're probably not going to want to stay out in that, right? Because
right.
it could get tagged. But so if you can get off the side of the road and even put a barrier between you and the vehicle, that might be your best solution. But again,
Mhm.
it depends on the circumstances that you're facing.
Yeah, the disclaimer here obviously is if your vehicle is
Right.
the one repeatedly getting pummeled by a semi truck,
Right.
at some point you might want to get out of that vehicle. But
Exactly.
if you're in the median and your vehicle's out there by itself and another car comes and hits it, and you're out there running around trying to avoid cars sliding down the road,
Silly.
you're safer inside your vehicle.
Exactly.
Um, really good point there. When we were doing prep work here, you brought up a really good point. You have a newer car. It's you haven't extended the life cycle because you can't get one, but there's a recall on it, right? So we
Right.
have recall issues. What's going on with your recall?
So, and I'm not exactly sure, but it's an engine area part, and
Sounds
it's
important to
been
me.
months since I received a recall notice, and I've been told that I will be notified when it's available. So again, check with my local dealership, and they said the parts still aren't here. So, and that's been months. So that's another issue with the supply chain is that you can't get parts.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword that we're facing here in that we have to extend the life cycles of these vehicles, but then to get them repaired when they need repair, sometimes it's going to be difficult because of supply chain parts issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we said at the beginning here, it's more than just a semiconductor that started this
Right.
problem that we have in our industry of not being able to build cars. It's everything. New cars can't get those parts. Used cars can't get the parts that they need. So everything is impacted out there, and we
Right.
need to figure out how to navigate this and keep our drivers safe. Properly maintaining. So, getting to that and talking a little bit more detail, I have a very, very rigorous PM program. And I do have our drivers going every 5,000 miles, regardless of supply chain problems. And yeah, I've got the driver who says, it says right here in the manual. I don't have to go in until every 7,500 miles. I'm like, okay, that's great. The manual says that. And it's great that I paid a little bit more for synthetic oil last time, but I need you in there sooner. I need you in there to get your tire pressure looked at, get the tires rotated. While the wheels are off, let's look at the brake pads. Um, that's Jade, if that got picked up on on the
Welcome,
podcast.
Jade, to
That's
the
what up.
podcast. It's a
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
dog, Bob. You have a very cool pup.
yeah. She's awesome. Maybe she'll come into the camera view here, um, but doing preventive maintenance, regardless of supply chain problems, I do that religiously, and I ask the drivers to do that. When I started at the company I'm at, I looked into maintenance first thing, and drivers were doing maintenance, but they were primarily at the quick lube shop, right? The drive through 15-minute, you get oil and you're on your way. So preventive maintenance is not just putting oil in the car, right?
Right.
There's other things that you need to do when you do a preventive maintenance schedule, excuse me, on a vehicle. Um, Other things fail than oil. Brake pads are constantly used, and the brake pad thickness is constantly reducing. Tires, they wear unevenly. You got to get in alignment. They'll extend the life better if they're properly inflated. And if you move them from front to back, your vehicle is going to handle better as the tread goes down. So all of these things need to be done to keep drivers safe. This is just normal best practice, regardless if you're extending the life of your vehicle. But now you're at the point where you have to. get your driver into the right shop. And it could be harder now because you didn't have a culture of this before.
Hmm.
But you really need to get if you have field managers, looking over your drivers, or direct communication with your drivers, or this applies to you in your own personal vehicle. Get in there, but get out of the quick lube places. Get into the Firestone, the Goodyear, the Pep Boys. If your vehicle is covered under, dealer maintenance and it's free, go to the dealer. But the Jiffy Lube and Valvoline, don't sue me and say that I'm saying bad things about you, right? That's not what I'm saying. There's a value to what they do, and you can get in and out of there quickly. And there's some things that they look at, but not all of them can replace your brakes. They might tell you you have bad brakes, but they can't replace them. So I'm just saying, if you're in a fleet and you have an opportunity to get work done, go to the shop that can do it all at once, because that way you're not putting it off and having to go back again.
Yep.
Um, what else was I going to say about even the tires? Tread depth. Tread depth
Right.
is an important thing.
Yep.
When what's the best time to replace a tire? Right, when you can see Abe Lincoln's head or something like
Yeah,
that.
and actually, and that actually is an absolute valid way to check tread depth. Just take a U.S. penny and flip the penny over Lincoln's head. If the top of Lincoln's head is not covered by the tread, then it's too low. The tire needs to be replaced. And don't just check like the center tread. You got to go all the way across the tire and check
That's right.
all treads also. And while you're doing that, also check the side walls and things like that. Look for cracks, look for gouges, anything like that. You hit one hard chuck hole, you can damage that tire. That's going to create a bubble in the sidewall, and that could create a tire air out or blowout. And Bob, there's no reason why tires shouldn't be checked every week. Again, you hit one pothole, it's going to change the pressure of the tire. And people say, well, now hold on, I have the thing on my dash that'll light up if I have a low tire. Well, some of those don't go off until about 10 pounds low. Do you want to be riding around on a tire that's 9 pounds low? I don't think that's very safe. The reason that we have to have them properly inflated so that you get the most tire to road surface contact. If a tire is underinflated, what will happen once it starts rotating, the center will suck up in. So it's on the edges of the tires that's hitting. So if you see the edges being worn out on your tire, that's probably low air pressure. If you have them overinflated, then the center of the tire is going to wear out first, and then the edges will have more tread depth. If you're seeing that, then you have too much air in the tire. But why not check them once a week? I do mine on Sundays. I'll do it at halftime now, but check them once a week and get a decent tire gauge, and they're not that hard to use. Okay, so anybody can do it. And make sure that you're checking them when the tire is cold, not after you've been running for a while, because they'll give you a false high reading.
Yep, that's right. Cold weather, tires deflate a little anyway, so you do
Yes, they
want to check
do.
them when they're cold,
Yep,
and especially in the winter, you really want to have a good tread
absolutely.
depth and proper tire pressure, because that vehicle is going to handle differently on ice and snow, and you want to make sure that tire pressure is accurate. So Abe Lincoln's head is a good way to check.
It
Quick,
actually is,
easy,
it
dirty.
works. It really works.
Yeah.
Everybody has a penny, that so
Yep.
if you want to go out and get a tread gauge or whatever, that's fine. Go ahead. But I'm telling you, the penny thing works. So,
It does work, but that number, just so people know, is 4/32 of an inch,
right.
or 3 millimeters. So if you think that's if you want to be the technical one and actually measure it, that's where it needs to be. But any lower than that, you start getting to 2 millimeters, you're illegal, right? And if you're
Yeah.
illegal, that means that tire is dangerous. You are driving around in a vehicle that is not going to handle well. And
Right.
vehicles are engineered around the tire, right? So that tire has to be the right tire for that vehicle. It has to have the correct tire pressure, and it has to have the correct tread depth, because everything that car was designed to do, from how fast it can go, how much it weighs, or how it handles and steers, requires that tire to have that. And if your tire is not up to the spec, your vehicle is going to handle differently. It's not going to stop as well. It's not going to stop well in the wet weather. If you go faster, you can blow it out if you don't have good tires. So these are all really important things to keep drivers safe around tires. It's amazing how safe a driver can be just by having proper tire maintenance done.
Well, Bob, I always say I think the most important safety equipment, people can say, well, it's the airbags or it's the anti-lock brakes or it's this or it's that. No, the
Seatbelt.
most important
Yeah.
safety equipment are the tires. That's what the car is riding on. Think about this, about the size of the palm of your hand that's what is 4 patches of that around your vehicle. And as you go faster, that even, that increases or decreases, I should say. So how important is that? There's 3 ways you control a vehicle: steer, brake, accelerate. All of that's dependent on the tires. So if you don't
Right.
have good traction, guess what? You're unsafe. So you're exactly right. And the only reason that there is tread on the tires is to dissipate water and snow and other debris that are on the roadway. Listen, race car drivers, they drive slicks, right? There's no tread on those cars. And the reason there's no tread on those cars is so that they can have the most tire to road surface contact or tire to track surface contact.
That's right.
Well, that's not going to be applicable in everyday driving. You need that tread on there to dissipate that garbage out from underneath your tires so you don't ride up on top of the water or the snow and hydroplane and get into those situations. So again, it's so important. Tread depth and proper inflation are just vital for safety. And drivers, and I would urge fleet managers and safety managers to urge your drivers to check that once a week, and don't be dependent on those darn idiot lights in the dash.
That's right. That's
You know,
right.
so
Yeah. Going back to race car drivers, at least in NASCAR, they drive with the slicks. That's why they don't
right,
drive when it rains.
right.
There's
As soon as
zero
it starts to
traction.
rain, they stop the race. Right, exactly.
Yeah, they can't displace the water. Now,
Right.
some of the open wheel ones will,
Hmm.
but they have to take off the slicks and put on
Right.
the tread tire.
That's what they do.
So
That's exactly
yeah,
right. For that
yeah,
reason. Right.
yeah. But we're not race car drivers. We need that tread. Right? We need our vehicle to be as safe as
Right.
possible. And the best way to get water away from a tire is to have one with a good tread depth that's designed to move the water and keep
Right.
rubber on the road. And you can't do it if your tread depth is too low. You can't
Right.
displace enough water. But brakes is huge safety. I told you I looked into some maintenance when I came on board with the company I'm with, and I found everybody was going to Jiffy Lube or the dealer. When they're at the dealer, they're getting a complete brake job. They're getting pads, rotors, calipers. And I'm like, well, why is everybody getting this $1,500 brake job? It's because they only got oil in the car and nobody ever put $140 pads on. So everybody was driving around on metal to metal brakes, not able to stop. And they're like, oh, my brakes are grinding. I better pull into this dealer here and get this really expensive brake job.
Wow.
So a brand new brake pad comes with about a half inch of pad, and it lasts a long time. It's going to last a long time if you properly maintain them, inspect them, and make sure your rotors are good and you're not grinding them down. But when you get about half that thickness, you're getting close to where you want to start replacing them. And that's a quarter of an inch, right? So, but if you get to an eighth of an inch, you're almost at imminent failure. We
Right.
literally had drivers with 0 inch depth on their brake pads, literally a rusted piece of metal grinding against the rotor.
And how could they not hear the noise, right? So you got the rivets in there making noise to warn you that, hey, you need to replace your brakes. And again, drivers need to be educated on that. If they hear that squealing going on every time they apply the brakes, there's something wrong typically. So,
So maybe not everybody knows that, but that's a really good point. There are built-in pieces inside that brake pad that will tell you
right,
when you hear that squeaking, that's designed to tell you it's time to replace your brake pads. You still
right,
have some pad left, but that squeak is that rivet that is coming out of
correct.
there. We were going past that rivet and the squeaking stopped. Now it's grinding.
Wow.
Right. So
That's bad.
so yeah, but that's the problem here. So where you go to get your maintenance done is very important. Oil change is not maintenance. That's one part of preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance is looking at everything. If you're running a company and you want that car on the road, maybe it was on the road for all that time, but it was on the road unsafe. But now it has an extended downtime, and your driver is probably in a rental. It's just increasing costs. But that driver certainly was not safe driving around on bad brakes. But now the brake job is going to be super expensive. If that driver had consistently gone to a national account provider, I don't want to call out one provider over another, but think of the ones that's in every state: Firestone, Goodyear, Pep Boys, um, National Tire and Battery. I don't know, anything that you see out there. Anytime they put that car up in the air, they're looking at everything. They're checking the belts, the oils, hoses, rotating the tires, checking tire pressure, and getting those brake pads replaced as needed. Right. So for the little bit of longer time it takes, your fleet is going to be more productive, generating more revenue more often in the long run, with your driver safe, at a lower cost. So
Right.
all of it really comes back to doing the proper preventive maintenance at the right place.
Yeah, I think it's just such a valid point you make, Bob, and you have a lot of experience with this, and I know that you have a very good adherence. With your drivers, they adhere to the maintenance policies pretty well. You need to have that policy, and we're getting back to the policy issues, right, or the policy
It's important.
discussion. But you need to have that policy, and you need to do everything you can to make sure that the drivers are adhering to that. And one other thing I like to say is that I've done a lot of driver training, and I've gotten into um, reps' cars and things like that, or employees' cars, and the engine light's on. And I ask them, well, how long has that been on? Well, I don't know. I actually had a guy, you think I'm making this up, I'm not. He took a sticky note and put it on his dashboard so that he couldn't see the light. I said, how long's that? I saw the sticky note and I pulled it off. I said, why? What's it? And he says, wow, that light bugs me. I said, how long has your engine light been on? I said, have you had it checked? Well, I'm really busy and everything. I said, get it checked, and I contacted the fleet manager and said, listen, you got to take care of this with this guy. I told him, I'm hoping that they followed up with him, but I absolutely would not use that person's vehicle when we were doing behind the wheel training because I didn't know what was going on with it. But he told me it'd been on for like a couple of months. I was like, wow. And some of those are false lights, right? But you cannot assume that.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that the drivers know that engine light goes on. Get into the shop, get it checked. Don't well, it seems to be running all right. Don't do that.
Yeah.
There's a technical term for that, Bob. That's called bad. Don't do bad.
Right. Right. So when I was younger, I used electrical tape, right? Because it's stuck on there better.
Well,
The
it
light
blends in
couldn't shine.
better.
Yeah, the light couldn't shine through, and post it just doesn't make any sense.
He had a post-it note on his dashboard. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
But no, that's a valid point. I talk about my fleet a lot because I've got a large fleet. I've got drivers on the road. We drive anywhere from 25 to 30,000 miles a year.
Wow.
They're going into a shop every 5,000 miles, almost,
Right.
you know, almost every other month, right? They're in there a lot. So I'm not too worried about if they go to the right shop. I'm not too worried that they're not getting their brakes checked or tires checked. I've I've trained them to policy. Their culture is to use the correct shop. We did it a long time ago. I feel like we're lucky now because we need to extend the life of our vehicles, and they're already
Right.
used to this and accustomed to this. So
Right.
so they're doing it. But you mentioned we had good compliance. We were just trying to get 75% compliance. We had no reason behind that number. It was just a number to hit.
Mhm.
But we hit it right away. And again, if you develop policy and train it to your drivers,
Right.
they just want to know what they're supposed to do and they'll do it.
Mhm.
But right now, my fleet management company came in and we did an annual review. We're getting 82% compliance
That's
of using the right shop and getting in at the right time.
that's
So,
fantastic. I mean, that is
yeah,
really good. That is a good number. And people say, "Oh, well, only 82." That's in the industry. That's a pretty good number. So, congratulations on that, my friend. I mean, that's
yeah, and
good work by you.
congratulations to our drivers. Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually
Well, and
sent,
but it's creating that culture, right, Bob? It's what we always say about the
right,
driver safety culture. Well, the same thing here. That's applicable. That is a culture. So, especially now, as we keep saying during this podcast, with the extended lives of these vehicles, and they're getting higher in mileage. You just have to make sure they're properly maintained
Yeah.
checked on a regular basis. I love what you're saying here. Everything checked. Every 5,000. I think that's just a good rule of thumb to follow.
Yep. And we keep that conversation going, especially now that we've extended the life of our vehicles.
Right.
I'm constantly communicating with field management. I'm on their
Right.
calls. They have calls with their drivers. I'm on their managers' calls. I talk to the general managers over the different, business lines, and I tell them we need to stay on top of this. The driver safety. I always bring it back to driver safety.
Right.
Everything is about driver safety in my fleet. I'm putting them in a vehicle. I can't get them a new vehicle. I need to rely on them. This is on them, right? But I'm developing the policy to get that vehicle in the shop to keep them safe. And they're doing a great job. We congratulate them, we thank them, and we tell them what you're doing is keeping you safe, and we constantly keep that message going.
Right.
So that's preventative maintenance when you're extending the life of an asset. Um, where a driver's safety is at risk is just really, really key right now.
Right. Right. No, it's a great point. It's a valid point. And I'm glad that you established that before we had to have the extended the life cycles on the vehicles. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
just again, good work.
Yeah. So we can all learn from this, right? We can all do this for our personal vehicles. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, find the right shop and get it done. During the pandemic, it was really tough to do maintenance, but we still had to be on the road. The company I'm with was essential service. It was related to healthcare. We've got to be out there
Right.
and being on the road. Maintenance, we had to allow the quick lube places for a while
Hmm.
because uh, the waiting rooms are closed. Right.
Right.
So if you're going to wait for your vehicle inside a Firestone or a Goodyear, they weren't allowing people to come in, but we
Right.
had to keep our drivers productive. Even right now, so many vehicles are back on the road needing service,
Hmm.
from personal vehicles to other fleets, um, that the shops are have such a backlog, and they're so extremely busy right now.
Yeah.
And
And
everybody's vehicle is old; it needs work.
right. Just personally, so the mechanic I go to, I have a wonderful mechanic, it's his own shop, and I say there's a few times when you might be able to use the word honest and mechanic in the same sentence. I'm not knocking mechanics, but I mean, this guy is terrific. I trust him with my life. And he's had a tough time filling positions. So there might be
Hmm.
something in that as well, in that, you can't get the technicians or the mechanics to work. So that might be some of the issue as well as not being able to get into the shops. But you have to be diligent and make sure that this is all done, and also in between, make sure that the drivers are doing their own checks of the vehicle, the tires and the oil, and pop the hood, check the oil. Any
Yeah.
lights come on, take care of that. And if you hear any squeaking or squealing, that's the brakes. You have to have that taken care of right away too. Again,
Yeah.
educating your drivers, I think, is vital here.
Yeah. And you brought up a really good point. You know, shops are having a hard time filling positions. It's more than just the position, maybe related to, laying off during a pandemic,
Right,
but we have a shortage in the industry of people going into the trades,
right,
and mechanics is a certain trade. So if you're a public service fleet, or a government fleet, and you have your own garage, you're probably having the same problem trying to
right.
find the talent to come in and work in that garage, and that's jeopardizing the safety of your vehicles.
Certainly is.
Um, but that's a huge thing that we're dealing with in the industry as well. So if anybody's out there listening and is trying to figure out what could be a good career move, um, I'm understanding that they're doing
There it
excellent
is.
training and paying very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're being paid very well. So there's a demand.
Yeah, so
So
yeah, that could be a good career move for somebody
mm-hmm.
that wants to get into um, a good career.
Yep, yep. High demand.
Well, what else do we got around this? I really like that we kind of that's what this podcast is about. We just have conversations, and the conversation
Right,
usually goes in another direction. We just identified two different things that we didn't, even you know pre talk about, from
right,
so shortages in talent, but also a really important one. I'm glad you brought it up, is what to do if you do have a breakdown on the side of
Right.
the road. And those are really important things. Extending the life of the vehicle, you've got to make sure that the service is getting done. That's
Right.
the bottom line, is you've got to
Yep.
make sure that vehicle's safe. But with that, I think we're at the, surprisingly, I like how it happens. We have great conversations about fleet safety. I guess that happens when you get a couple geeks together. But we're at that point where we kind of want to naturally have our podcast ending around 30 minutes, unless you
Right.
have anything that you need to add for safety.
No, I think we covered it. Again, tires, brakes are the two keys, I think, with this, and make sure the engine is well maintained. I think you've done a really good job of explaining what you're doing with your organization, and there's the model. There you go, people. Listen to Bob. Okay, be like Bob. Okay, so
Be like Bob. Yeah. Um, be like Bob. I mean, Bob's been doing this for 23 years. I mean, I
right,
kind of have an understanding of what we need to do. But I only got there because I listened to other people, right? I mean, other
right,
people have been doing this. This is an industry best practice in the fleet industry.
right.
I'm only sharing what I've learned from others. For your personal vehicles, if you just happen to pick this podcast up on your own, hopefully you've picked something up from
Same
this,
thing.
and can help take care of your vehicle. None of us can go out and buy new vehicles right now. It's very difficult, and if you are, you're paying a lot, so it's just not happening. If you're extending the life of your personal vehicle, please get it in for really good maintenance. Get that
Right.
safety inspection done, and do more than just clean oil. All right. Well, with that, if you are listening to this podcast on a popular platform such as Spotify, Apple, or Google, please subscribe and be notified of future episodes. You can also find us on YouTube at Fleet Safety Geeks. If you go there, please like and subscribe so that you can be notified of future episodes. We also have just recently added a LinkedIn page, so you can always reach us there. Both Phil and I can get there. If you are friends with us on LinkedIn, you can reach us there if you want to be on an episode or have a suggestion for an episode. I think we have a few people that we're trying to get on that are actually lining up, and I think that's exciting. So there's going to be some really good episodes coming up. And we're also on Facebook and Twitter if you want to find us out there. Well, with that, have a great and safe weekend, and hopefully we'll be doing this again real soon.
Okay, Bob. Always good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Phil.
Take care.
Take care.